Let me ask you a question. And I want you to be brutally honest with yourself here.
Always a dangerous way to start a deep dive, but okay.
Right, but just think about it. If you're sitting there right now, maybe you're commuting or, having your morning coffee, you look at that really expensive college degree hanging on your wall.
Mm-hmm.
Do you assume that piece of paper guarantees you a safe, comfortable trajectory through the corporate world?
Most people probably do.
Exactly. But if you still believe in that old narrative that a $200,000 education is basically an ironclad insurance policy for a nice house in suburbia, you might want to brace yourself.
Yeah, definitely.
Because if you're banking on that traditional path today, you are essentially holding a VHS tape in a Netflix world.
That is a phenomenal metaphor to kick things off.
It's hard, right?
It really does. And it perfectly captures the gravity of our mission for today's deep dive. We are exploring a highly provocative piece of writing titled The Great Uninventing, Surviving the AI Automation Wave.
Surviving being the key word there.
Right. We're going to examine how the traditional American dream is basically being systematically dismantled by the Fourth Industrial Revolution. And, more importantly, we're going to break down the specific survival strategies provided in the text to help you navigate this massive chaotic shift.
And the scope of this material we're looking at is just massive. It heavily features some pretty jarring insights from Andrew Yang's recent appearance on the Moonshots podcast.
Which was fascinating.
Oh, totally. And then it caps everything off with a very aggressive survival strategy pitched by a tech company called R2D2 AI. I mean, we are covering everything from macroeconomic theory all the way down to how teenagers are socializing on a Friday night.
And it's all tied together by this core reality of automation. But before we get into the weeds, I do think it's critical to set the parameters for our discussion today.
Yeah, good call.
Because the material we're unpacking touches on some highly politically charged concepts, specifically things like universal basic income or UBI. It also directly quotes prominent political and public figures like Andrew Yang and Elon Musk. So I want to make it absolutely clear to you, the listener, that our goal today is strictly to report on and analyze the economic and social arguments exactly as they are presented in this source material.
We're just the messengers.
Exactly. We're not taking any political sides, nor are we endorsing these viewpoints. We're simply exploring the conversation that is happening right now about our collective economic future so you can be informed.
Okay, let's unpack this. We're introduced almost immediately to Andrew Yang. Now, you likely know him as the 2020 presidential candidate, serial entrepreneur, the math guy who wore the math hat on the debate stage.
Right, the math hat.
Yeah. He has been sounding the alarm for years, and he's doing it because he is looking directly at the hard data of the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
He realized early on that the basic math of the American economy just simply no longer adds up for the average worker.
And the terminology the source uses to describe this economic shift is really stark.
It's brutal, honestly.
It is. I mean, we all remember how the COVID pandemic disrupted the global workforce, right? But that is framed here as just a warning shot.
Just a warning shot.
Yeah. Artificial intelligence, on the other hand, is described as the double tap to the head of the traditional office job.
Which implies a structural finality.
Yes.
We aren't talking about cyclical layoffs where, jobs come back when interest rates drop. We're talking about jobs being permanently erased from the board.
It is a terrifying distinction, and to illustrate that double tap, there's this chilling anecdote in the source about a massive private equity firm.
Oh, the all-hands meeting story?
Yes. So look at the private equity sector. The traditional pipeline was always, graduate from a top-tier school, grind through those grueling junior associate years.
80-hour weeks.
Exactly. Just brutal hours. Make partner and build wealth. But imagine sitting down for the firm-wide meeting, and the very first slide on the projector, topic number 1, simply says, "We don't need associates anymore."
Just like that.
Just like that. That isn't just a corporate restructuring. That is the complete vaporization of the apprenticeship model.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, what we're really witnessing is the death of the traditional corporate pyramid.
The pyramid, right?
We're all familiar with that structure. It relies on a massive, wide base of junior employees doing foundational grunt work.
The associates.
Right, supporting a smaller layer of middle managers and then peaking with a few executives at the top. But because of these new AI capabilities, those structures are rapidly collapsing into what are being called column companies.
The column company. It's
Yeah.
such a brutal, efficient visual.
It really is.
Instead of a wide base of entry-level workers, you just have a straight, narrow pillar of a few highly leveraged senior employees.
And there's a perfect case study of this in the text with a tech startup called Noble Mobile.
Oh, this story blew my mind.
Right. So they were right on the verge of hiring a whole fleet of junior engineers to scale up their operations. The budget was approved.
We were ready to pull the trigger.
Exactly. But then the chief technology officer walks in and halts everything.
Just stops it cold.
Because he realized that by equipping just one of their senior engineers with the right AI co-pilots and automated testing tools, that single person could easily execute the workload of 5 junior engineers.
The mechanics of that are what make it so incredibly disruptive. Because that senior engineer isn't suddenly working 5 times as hard.
No, not at all.
The AI is simply stripping away all the boilerplate coding, the basic debugging, all those foundational tasks that used to require an army of entry-level grads.
But this raises a really important question. If you lob off the entire bottom of the corporate pyramid, where do the senior engineers come from in 10 years?
Right. If there's no entry level, the entire ecosystem risks eating its own seed corn.
Exactly. If you haven't already boarded the train and secured a senior role, the doors are basically closing. The column just does not have room for beginners.
And here's where it gets really interesting. Because we are heading toward a massive clash of futuristic visions regarding what happens next.
The 2026 cliff.
Yes, the 2026 cliff. On one side, you have Elon Musk's timeline. Musk is envisioning a concept called universal high income, or UHI.
Which is a very different concept from UBI.
Very different. UHI is this post-scarcity utopian vision where compute power and humanoid robots drive the cost of goods and services to near zero. Essentially, robots do everything so we can all just be rich and pursue our passions.
It's a compelling science fiction utopia.
For sure. But we have to contrast Musk's vision with a massive truth bomb from Andrew Yang.
Right. Yang looks at that UHI timeline and poses the critical, immediate question. How exactly do we get from the fragile economy we have today to that utopian post-scarcity future without completely burning the house down in the process?
Because economic transitions of this magnitude
Are historically very bloody and very messy.
Exactly. The transition is the terrifying part. Let's bring this down to earth and look at a hypothetical guy from the source named Mike.
Okay, let's talk about Mike.
So Mike is 50 years old. He's a middle manager at a regional bank. He lives out in the suburbs. He has 2 teenagers in high school.
And he has a $4,000 monthly mortgage payment that's due on the 1st of next month.
Right. By every societal metric we have, Mike did everything right. He played by the rules. But suddenly, his bank decides to optimize his entire division using a new large language model, and Mike's job is eliminated.
He's just gone.
Gone. You cannot look Mike in the eye and say, hey, don't panic. By the year 2035, robots are going to do your laundry and money will flow like water.
Because Mike does not care about 2035.
No, Mike needs to survive a Tuesday in 2026.
And that immediate visceral panic is exactly why Yang argues that the traditional American social
A
contract,
deal that if you work hard, you'll be secure.
right, that contract is actively being shredded and fed into an AI model.
Wow.
Because of this, Yang proposes that universal basic income, specifically a direct payment of $1,000 to $2,000 a month, is absolutely necessary as a survival bridge.
Now, keeping our neutral framing here, strictly looking at the economic argument presented.
Of course, UBI is not positioned here as a permanent utopian solution where nobody ever works again. It is positioned as an emergency parachute to get everyday people like Mike across this chaotic transition period without the entire consumer economy collapsing.
Okay, I see the math Yang is looking at. But let's play devil's advocate and go back to Mike for a second.
Sure.
If Mike loses his low 6-figure middle management salary, is a $1,000 a month UBI really going to bridge the gap? I mean, he has a $4,000 mortgage. $1,000 a month feels like putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. Is that actually going to save the middle class?
That is the exact tension in this debate. Yang's math with UBI isn't designed to seamlessly maintain Mike's upper-middle-class suburban lifestyle.
Oh, yeah.
It's designed to establish a hard floor so that Mike doesn't end up on the street, and so that millions of Mikes don't simultaneously default on their mortgages and trigger a catastrophic banking crisis.
So it's a macroeconomic buffer, not a one-to-one salary replacement.
Precisely. It's a bridge over the 2026 cliff.
Which is a terrifying bridge to cross. But you know what the ultimate irony of this entire economic shift is?
The white collar versus blue collar flip.
Yes. We have spent the last 40 years in this country pushing a very specific narrative onto our kids. We told them to go to a 4-year university, get a clean knowledge work job, sit in a nice air-conditioned office, and at all costs avoid the manual labor trades.
And now we're seeing a total inversion of that status hierarchy.
It's actually crazy. Suddenly, your cousin, who is a fancy corporate lawyer, is highly vulnerable, while your buddy, who is a plumber, is sitting on an ironclad career.
What's fascinating here is the specific concept used in the text to explain this massive irony.
Right.
And that concept is friction. When we look at knowledge work, whether it's writing a legal brief, generating a marketing plan, analyzing financial data, that work exists in a digital environment.
It's just bits and bytes.
Exactly. Bits and bytes are incredibly easy to manipulate. And AI can generate a comprehensive legal brief in about 3 seconds. That is an incredibly low-friction task for a computer. But the physical world?
Oh, the physical world is messy.
Messy, unpredictable, and full of friction.
Think about a catastrophic plumbing disaster in a basement. Every single house is built differently. The pipes are laid out uniquely. The water damage creates entirely new variables.
Yep.
Trying to get a 200-pound humanoid robot to navigate down a flight of stairs, squeeze through a cramped, wet crawl space, diagnose a unique leak, and physically wrench a rusty pipe. I mean, that is an incredibly high-friction task.
Precisely. The physical constraints are the moat. While the clean office jobs are rapidly being eaten by software because they lack friction, the individuals who know how to physically diagnose an HVAC system or repair a burst pipe or wire a complex electrical panel, they possess ultimate job security.
The plumber is effectively robot-proof for the foreseeable future.
The high-friction hero.
The high-friction hero. I love that. It completely flips everything we thought we knew about career safety. But this frictionless reality isn't just hollowing out the white-collar job market.
No, it's going much deeper.
It is actively bleeding into our personal lives and creating what the source calls an emotional pandemic of isolation.
Yeah, the social statistics are alarming.
Young people today are socializing 50% less than they used to, and the human cost of that is staggering.
It really is. There's a deeply sobering anecdote shared by one of the podcast hosts regarding a photo his son sent him.
Oh, the basement party.
Right. It was a Friday night, and his son was at what was supposed to be a basement party. But the photo just showed 6 teenagers sitting in a dark, unfinished basement.
Just hanging out.
Well, they were arranged in a circle, but they were completely silent, entirely independent of one another, just staring down at their individual phones. There was zero interaction.
That is such a bleak image, and we're seeing this isolation manifest as a broader international trend, too.
The lying flat movement.
Yes, look at China and Japan, where there's this massive movement among the youth known as lying flat. Essentially, young people are looking at the impossible math of the modern economy.
The cost of housing, hyper-competitive jobs.
Staggering expectations. And they're simply opting out of the rat race entirely. They're choosing bare minimum survival over participation.
But what takes this from a concerning economic trend to a deeply dystopian reality is how it intersects with the rise of AI companionship.
Right.
This is where the concept of friction comes back into play, but this time in a psychological sense. The source poses a really tough question.
Which is?
Why would a young person deal with the profound friction of a real-life boyfriend or girlfriend? I mean, a real human being has bad days, they have complex emotional needs, they might argue with you or challenge your worldview.
Right, relationships are hard work.
Exactly. Why deal with all that messy human friction when you can simply download an AI partner program to be perfectly supportive, perfectly agreeable, 24/7?
I mean, isn't that friction the entire point of a relationship?
You'd think so.
If you have an AI girlfriend or boyfriend who just nods and agrees with every single thing you say, you aren't really in a relationship. You're just trapped in a digital echo chamber. I would think that lack of pushback would eventually drive you completely insane.
You would think so. But for a generation exhausted by economic anxiety and social isolation, the sheer convenience of a frictionless companion is highly seductive.
I guess I can see that.
However, the conclusion drawn by the source here is exactly aligned with your instinct. Friction is actually where the magic happens.
Yeah.
Without friction, there is no growth. Friction is why we build families. Working through difficult, messy things with other people is what bonds us and builds communities.
So, what does this all mean for us right now? Because if we replace real human connection with the seamless artificial abundance of AI companions, we aren't just losing our entry-level jobs, we are fundamentally losing our souls.
That's the core warning.
Yeah.
You cannot afford to sit around and wait for 80-year-old legislators in Washington, D.C. to pass a law to save you.
And you certainly can't rely on the safety of a traditional corporate pyramid because, as we established, the base of that pyramid is already gone.
The urgency is paramount. You have to take immediate action to adapt. And fortunately, there is a very specific three-rule action plan laid out in the text for survival in 2026 and beyond.
Okay, let's run through these. Rule number 1 is a fundamental mindset shift. Stop being a consumer and start being a creator.
Right. If your only interaction with AI is using it to passively generate funny pictures or algorithmically binge-watch content, you are a victim of the automation wave.
But if you take those exact same AI tools and use them to build a business model or streamline a workflow or create tangible value, you elevate yourself above the wave.
Which leads directly into rule number 2, rely on entrepreneurship.
Building your own venture is framed here as the only path where you actually maintain control of your equity and your future.
Because every other traditional path leaves you at the mercy of a corporate CEO. A CEO who might wake up one morning and decide to juice their quarterly stock price by replacing your entire middle management department with an algorithm.
Yeah, that's a scary thought. But when you're the entrepreneur, you're the one holding the keys.
And finally, rule number 3, you must learn to talk to AI, and you must use it daily.
There is a brilliant historical metaphor used here.
The blacksmith one.
Yes. Choosing not to interact with large language models today is the exact equivalent of choosing to remain a horseshoe blacksmith in the age of the Ford Model T.
It isn't a noble stand for tradition.
No, it's simply ensuring that you'll be entirely left behind by the new infrastructure of the modern world.
And this brings us to the very specific, aggressive survival strategy pitched to the end of the text by a tech company called R2D2 AI.
Yeah, the message comes from someone named Zach at R2D2AI.com, and it serves as a fascinating real-world application of everything we've just discussed.
They are positioning their service as the ultimate escape hatch for this exact crisis. Their pitch perfectly mirrors the shift from the pyramid to the column.
Exactly. Zach's pitch is to take the very same AI tools that massive multinational corporations are using to lay off thousands of workers and put them in the hands of everyday entrepreneurs.
They promise to help independent businesses take those heavy, traditional pyramid costs and transform them into streamlined column profits.
They claim they can empower your small, agile team of 3 or 4 people to execute the output of a massive Fortune 500 department.
It is the ultimate democratization of scale.
And Zach acknowledges that the immediate transition into this AI economy is going to be incredibly messy, punchy, and chaotic.
He actually describes the immediate future as the Mad Max bits.
The Mad Max bits. Just this chaotic fight for survival in a disrupted landscape. But the goal of R2D2 AI is to be the partner that helps you navigate that rough terrain so you can actually survive long enough to reach the utopian Star Trek bits of the post-scarcity future.
And the explicit warning is, do not wait for the massive wave to hit in 2027 to start figuring this out.
You have to start now.
So to synthesize what we've unpacked today, the American dream, as we understood it for the last 50 years, is undergoing a radical, irreversible transformation.
Your traditional college degree might very well be a VHS tape in a streaming world.
The safe, wide corporate pyramids are rapidly collapsing into highly leveraged columns, systematically cutting off the entry-level path to wealth.
And most critically, the elimination of friction.
Whether it's the high physical friction of blue-collar trades that actively protects those jobs, or the emotional friction of messy human relationships.
That lack of friction is threatening both our livelihoods and the very fabric of our human connections.
Exactly.
I want to turn this directly back to you, listening right now. Understanding the mechanics of these massive shifts, from the vaporization of the junior associate to the ironclad security of the high-friction hero, to the vital difference between being a passive consumer versus an active creator.
This knowledge is what gives you the remote control to your own future.
You do not have to be, Mike, blindsided by an optimization algorithm because you thought the old rules still applied. You can see the wave coming, and you can build your column.
Which leaves us with a final, vital question to consider as you go about your week.
What's that?
Well, we've seen how friction is the very thing that protects our physical careers, like the plumber, and gives our personal lives deep, authentic meaning.
Right.
So as you move forward in an increasingly frictionless, automated, and digitized world, how can you intentionally design positive friction back into your daily routine? How do you ensure you don't lose your soul to the seduction of absolute convenience?
That is definitely something to chew on. Building a little bit of the hard stuff back into our lives on purpose. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the automation wave.
It's been a great conversation.
We love exploring these massive paradigm-shifting sources with you, and we'll be back soon to unpack more incredible insights. Until then, keep questioning the narrative and stay curious.